Hey, how's everybody? Welcome back to my Workbench Journal. It's been quite a while, as I said before. I've been working a lot of hours lately, and whatever time I do have is spent with my wife and my son, so it really isn't much time. But I figured everything's peaceful and quiet at the moment, so I can give you an update what I've been doing lately. Where I last left off, I was telling you I was working on Academy's 1/35th scale M60A1 Israeli Defense Force version. Well, here's the progress I've made so far. Here's the lower hull here. As you know, all painted, ready to go. And here's the upper hull. I finally got everything painted. I also threw a translucent top coat over the original base color, as you can see here. I'll give you a quick distinct difference. Base coat, top color. Now, for the top color, the top coat, I actually used this right here. I've had this thing for almost 20 years now, and still good, strangely enough. This was actually from Badger. They originally did an airbrush paint line, which it was okay, but it's not that great. It had a tendency to clog the nozzle and stuff. But it's definitely strictly a water-based color. So what I did was I made this translucent to the point where I would need several coats just to get a semi-transparent finish. And I just sloppily sprayed this on top of the base color. Most of it is on the turret and the upper hull. I only did a little bit, just a touch on the road wheels and a little bit on the, just a touch on the lower hull. The reason why I did this is because I wanted to simulate a faded look. It's still a little tricky for me because I'm still getting the hang of everything in regards to that, so it's a little tricky. It's not quite where I want it, but on the other half, once I get the gloss coat and stuff on it, it'll look a lot better, especially with the wash and stuff. So it's still a work in progress. Got with the color I needed on it, set it aside to dry, and I started working on the road wheels, which I finally got together. Finally, these are actually glued in. I actually put the vinyl caps in between, and this is after painting and all that stuff. I also had to do some touch-up work because I also had to spray this a little bit with the top color coat that I wanted to do. You can tell, base color, top coat color. You can see there's a slight difference. It's a little exaggerated, but once you get a wash on it and you do your dry brushing and stuff, it'll be far more subtle. Touch-ups I did, of course, was with flat black on the road wheels. As you know, before, I'm using the older steel M48 style wheels for that. Since I'm building an M60A3 or Magotch 6C Gimel, which I've mentioned before in videos. So I'm going to refer back to this as the Gimel or the A3. And since this is the one with the tank thermal sight, it's got the crosswind sensor on it. Like I said, I put it aside, gave it a day to dry. Then I started working on my detail painting, which you can tell. The canvas right here. Painted the crosswind sensor up top. First time I've used Vallejo's Mahler color for hand brushing, and I will state this for the record. That is some really, really good paint. I'm somewhat familiar with Vallejo's acrylics, mostly the Model Air, and when they used to be imported under Aeromaster, which I used for a World War II subject back in the mid-2000s. So I'm somewhat familiar with them. Of course, flat black for here. Everything else I needed to do, it's all good. The only detail painting I really got left is I got the smoke grenade launchers. I'm either going to paint these a light green, I'm going to paint them a black. The individual grenades, not the launcher itself or the container itself. Otherwise, I left everything else alone, and I put everything aside, gave it a couple days to dry. Actually, I gave it a week, because I'm going to be using the Future Floor Finish for this, as you already know. It's my go-to for a gloss coat. It's actually saved me a lot of money in buying acrylic gloss coats. It's really good, but you just got to be careful with using it because you don't want to flood it on. It might affect the paint. It'll run. It's a liquid acrylic, as I said before. Matter of fact, I got to put the lid back on. I shouldn't say put the lid. I got to close the cap back on this, or I might replace the cap on it, since I really don't use the squeeze bottle that much. Now, after all is said and done, I started focusing on the tracks. Now, I showed you last time that I was using AFV Club's track set. Well, the plan hasn't changed, and I still did the same. So My base coat was a dark gray. You can also use a black. You can use, as long as it's a very dark gray or a black, that's your base coat, because actual tracks are not bright and shiny. They're actually dark, gritty, since dark and gritty. I did that. Now, usually I'll add since I'm building an M60A3 in Israeli service, or the Magach, I should say, I didn't bother with a slight overcoat of rust. I didn't use rust paint because out in the desert, there's very little, if any, effects for rust, unless they go through, like, in case with Israel, either goes through the Dead Sea or somewhere that has a water or something to it. But even then, any rust, in my opinion, would be minimal. So I left it at that. But what I did do, let's see, oily steel. I had a bottle of natural. There it is. I used this for the dry brushing. This is what I used. Like I said, this is some great stuff. I didn't squeeze any out. I just took a paintbrush. This is what I mean by dry brushing. Took a flat brush somewhere. I'll give you an example of a flat brush. I used something like this, except I used the smaller one since I was doing the tracks. Took a flat brush, took a little bit, made sure this paint was well mixed before I applied it to the paintbrush. Squeezed a little bit, wiped off any excess with a paper towel. I didn't rinse it. When you're doing dry brushing, don't rinse the bottle. Don't rinse the paint right after you use it. You just want to wipe it, and then just like you're dusting off a knick-knack. You want to, as you can see here, you just want to dry brush it on. You see there's a slight, where the fading is on the steel, a slight metallic effect, which is what you want in the first place. As you can see, base coat's taken care of, and like I said before, usually I use a rust color, like a very thin coating of rust, just a slight dusting, to give a little worn, rusty effect. But since it's out in Israel, in the Middle East in general, I didn't go with that. Did my dry brushing on all the exposed areas, set it aside to dry, cleaned out my brush. Once all said and done, let it dry. I moved on to the track pads. This is the octagonal type. This is what they used starting in the mid to late 70s up until they started upgrading all the Magach series in Israel and moved on to the Merkava style tracks on them. I think it was just most of them, not all. Went with that. Painted the track pads black. Then everything's done. Give it time to dry. I am going to be applying a wash of raw umber, so this way it gives it more of a depth and more of a realistic rough effect. Because even though the tracks are as they are, you still want to give it a little bit more of a realistic feel. Or I do. Like I said, I'm not making this look like a gate guard. I'm not making it look like it was just poorly maintained. I'm going for a realistic effect. And any tank in combat do get roughed up, but they don't. But they do a lot of maintenance in the field. They do like reapplying. However, in combat, they're not pristine. So that's why I did the effect like I did, because I wanted more of a realistic look. And because I don't want it looking like a toy, that's why I'm doing the wash, the weathering effect. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. But this is all done. I think I added one too many tracks. That's no big deal, because once I get all the road wheels and the suspension and assembly and stuff, I gotta set this, remove a few tracks to fit, this way I know what it is, like how many links, and once it's all set, it's ready to go. Now the beauty of the AFV Club tracks is, even though you don't need them, you can use glue if you want on the pins. Basically how these assemble is, you got your track, it's already got the tooth on the inside. You take the side clips here. They come in runs. They tend to come in runs, so you could do up to like 5 or 10 at a time. And you don't have to paint them individually. You just do a run, do a whole length, paint as you see fit, and then you're set and ready to go. There are other aftermarket track companies out there. You got DEF, you got Bronco, and I'm sure there's Fruel Model and a couple others. But AFV is my particular favorite because, one, they're relatively cheap. They're easy to put together. They're very goof-proof. If you can't put these together, that means you're not ready for them, or somewhere along the way, you messed up. I've used And I've used a lot of AFV Club's track sets. I've used them for a Sherman. I've used them for an M1 Abrams, which I actually got a set for a Dragon kit that I got. I've used them for, and I've used them for also for a Marine Corps version of an M60A1 that I built for a friend some time ago. These are all done. They're ready. Now everything's set up and ready for the, well, not everything. I still got to paint the guns. I still got to paint brackets, mounts, whatever other odds and ends for this before I can put on a gloss coat. Once I get the gloss coat on, I'll be doing decals, a wash, and some weathering. But I'm actually glad these things are coming along nicely like it is. And as I said before, the Academy kit's pretty good. It goes together easy. It's not as really well detailed as, say, the AFV Club kit that I showed you last time. Unfortunately, I half-assed on that one. But it's still a really nice kit to put together. And hopefully it comes out the way I want it to. Unfortunately, being a modeler, and for those of you who watch this, you know and I know, when you're building, you want to make your next build better than the last one because of everything you learned, and so on and so forth. Oh, that reminds me, in case you're wondering if I glued the barrel on, no, I did not. Excuse me for a second. It's actually still separate. Once I get everything done, this will be glued on permanently, and it will be as is. There was a few things I wanted to do to the tank. I wanted to add a couple pieces of sheet styrene here and here, but I really didn't feel like it. Let's face it, I'm being lazy and I'm just being half-assed. You know, I just want to put this together and enjoy it, not make a contest quality kit. I just wanted to put something on the shelf, say, "Oh yeah, I built that." You know, show it off to people and talk about it a little bit. You know, it's kind of like nerd. I'm still a nerd at heart, even though I don't collect comic books and I don't collect a lot of other stuff. I'm still a nerd at heart, and I still enjoy what I do. Otherwise, this is basically it for the Magotch, which I'm doing. Hopefully in the next video I will show you the progress I've made, like the wash, the gloss coat, the decals, but I'm hoping that it'll come out the way I want it. It's, like I said, it's going to take a lot of time. I still got a little bit of detail painting to do here and there. I still got the headlights I got to paint. I still got the taillights I got to paint. But I'm probably going to hold off on those until I get all the weathering done and give it a final flat coat. And we'll see what happens from there. I'm still debating whether or not I should order a stowage set for the tank itself. I still got to cut out the mesh. I got a piece of mesh somewhere. I'll have to show you later. What I usually use, as I said before, I use an old piece of, I shouldn't say old, I use a piece of screen that you use for windows to keep the bugs out. I usually use that, and the one I use is a plastic color. You can use you could use a metal, but plastic seems to be a little bit more cooperative. And the piece I have is actually gray in color, which actually looks pretty decent to replicate which actually is used, sorry, I'm still getting my train of thought, which can be used to replicate the netting on the basket itself. And the template I'm going to be using will be, fortunately Academy has this, be right here. This is for the bottom, this is to wrap around the basket. As you can see here, like wrap around and the bottom. Like I said, don't have to do much to it. And if you want to, you could paint the mesh. I might not. Depends on what kind of mood I'm in. I'm still trying to figure out how I want to set up the machine guns on the turret. That'll take time. This is it for now. Hopefully I will try to keep you guys updated and try to make more progress on it. As I said before, apologize for not being on that much. I haven't been down here this much. I've been working. And hopefully it's kind of a double-edged sword though. As much as I bust my butt and I am tired, it's worth it. It's just on the other half, it's like, it's got to slow down sometime. So hopefully I'll have some more time and I'll get the Magotch rolling like I can. Or the Gimel. I shouldn't say Magotch, the Gimel. Yeah, here I am just tripping over my words and stuff. So happy modeling. Take it easy, guys. And hopefully I'll talk to you again very, very soon. Take care.